And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the I Teach PTE webinar series. This is the third webinar in the one-year program in 2025. And this time, we'll focus on planning a PTE course. So we'll have two presenters, Magda and Anita, and they will introduce themselves in a while. My name is Bartek Janiak, and before we move on, a few housekeeping things. First of all, the session is recorded. If for any reason you will just skip a minute or so, and I hope that you will watch the whole of the session, you'll have a chance to watch the recording on the I Teach PTE website, and it will be added to this website by the end of next week. In case you need captions, remember that there are two important buttons down below. So there is a Q&A where you can ask any questions related to this session. And if you click show captions, you'll have the meeting transcriptions. By tomorrow, all of the attendees, you'll receive an email from Zoom, and there will be a link to the survey. So we would appreciate if you could share your feedback. Once you complete the survey, you'll be able to download your certificate from today's webinar. And I guess that's all when it comes to the housekeeping. So Magda, Anita, the floor is yours. There are 50 plus minutes ahead of us in planning a PTE course. Enjoy.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bartek, and welcome everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I may have met some of you in recent months, but for those who I haven't met personally, a warm welcome. I would like to lay out the objectives for the next 50 minutes. So in this webinar today, we have three key objectives. The first one is we would like to introduce some key considerations and some key components of an effective PTE preparation course. Then I will hand over to Anita, who will walk you through an updated product of Pearson's that we're really excited about. So you will get a sneak preview in today's session. And finally, I will wrap up with some practical tips for selecting, adapting, and supplementing the product that Anita will talk to. So, to kick things off, a quick introduction. My name is Magda. For those who haven't met me, I'm the Global PTE Teacher Training Manager at Pearson. I've been teaching English language for over 20 years now, and I've taught a variety of test preparation courses. For many years now, I've been working closely with educators in a variety of geographies and contexts, supporting their professional development. Over to you, Anita.
Thanks, Magda. So my name is Anita, and currently I'm a learning strategy manager in Pearson. But in my ELT career, I have worked as a teacher, editor, and publisher. So now, as a learning strategy manager, I focus primarily on high-stakes assessment, and I make every effort every day to deliver high-quality resources to teachers and students around the world and to support them on their learning journey. Over to you, Magda.
Great. Okay, so before we dive into the first objective today, I'd love it if you could fill in a poll question. This will help Anita and me to understand our audience better. So please scan the QR code in front of you. I have one very, very simple question. Where do you currently teach? You'll see 5 options there. Let's get a sense of who is in the audience with us today.
Just one information, you don't have to scan if you don't want to, because it should appear on your Zoom account automatically. I can see that people are already
Great.
Typing in their answers.
Okay, wow. Okay, a very mixed audience today. Lots of teachers currently working at private language schools, exam preparation centers as well. Okay, and a nice even mix between the last three. That's wonderful. Okay, well, that is fantastic to see. And I definitely want to celebrate this diverse audience we have. From the sign-ups for this session, we have a lot of geographies, a lot of different countries and regions represented as well. Why this is important is because designing or planning a PTE course is going to be very different depending on the institution where you work. It is quite hard for us to kind of offer a one-size-fits-all approach. So today, hopefully, you'll be able to pick and choose some ideas to take back to your course planning. A K-12 school in Turkey, for example, we work with a lot of teachers in Turkey. They often have a very structured syllabus that spans the entire academic year. An exam preparation center in India, for example, is likely to be teaching students for more intensive programs from 4 to 8 weeks, say. Private language tutors often focus on one-to-one lessons, which could mean they are just delivering a few targeted sessions to their students. So a real mix bag. And with these various needs, we're really excited to talk to you today about a really flexible solution that we think would be a perfect fit for all of your teaching contexts to deliver really effective, holistic PTE preparation courses. And as I say, Anita will talk you through that product in a little while. But just to set the scene for you today, we understand that there are kind of 4 key considerations or 4 key variables when it comes to planning a PTE course. And you folks are probably more than familiar with these already. The first is time frame, the second, learner needs, the third, extended responses in PTE, often known as long answer questions, and the delivery format as well. So let's just jump to the first one. Learners may have months to prepare or only a few weeks, so course intensity must match their availability. Some learners need overall language improvement, while others have very specific weaknesses or areas for improvement. Certain PTE tasks, such as questions that require long answers or perhaps extended answers, such as describe image or write email in PTE core, well, they can be considered by students slightly trickier. And finally, the delivery format. Some of you will be using paper resources, and some of you will be asking your students to buy those. Some of you might be loaning them, and then some of you will be teaching fully online, so we'll be providing digital copies. I just want to focus on learner needs as well as a key consideration for planning a PTE course, because when we talk about learner needs, it's really, I think, important to kind of distinguish between what students think they need and what they actually need. And I wonder whether this resonates with you. Have you been in this situation before where perhaps a learner has said to you, I don't need to improve my grammar, or I really want to learn phrasal verbs, and that might be valid, but these perceived needs can sometimes be biased, right? After all, it's hard to know what you don't know. Sometimes these students have had past learning experiences or past teachers that are influencing what they think is their learning need. Now, if you think back to actual needs, well, this is where teachers really come in, because we are best placed to identify through careful observation and perhaps assessment, like diagnostic tests or placement tests, or marking students' writing, recurring issues. So, for example, a student might say, well, I don't need to improve my grammar, but we may say, well, actually, non-defining, defining relative clauses, these complex sentences are really useful in the extended writing tasks in PTE, compound sentences demonstrating nominalization. These are really important, so why not focus on these in the course as well? It's worth noting that, of course, teachers' views on language learning may also shape what they identify as actual needs. But I do think if we have the test front and center and what is expected of test takers, then we will be able to guide students accurately. So by balancing perceived and actual needs, we can create a more targeted and effective learning experience. Okay, so I think students sometimes come to me, with quite a firm a view on what they would like to study. But, I want to enforce how important a teacher is in this dialogue. As teachers, we bring valuable expertise, right? We, understand the test structure. After some time teaching, we will be able to identify better common challenges or common pitfalls that students have, and this comes with practice. We will also be able to transfer effective strategies for each of the question types to our students. Learners, on the other hand, may not always have a clear understanding of these things. They may think also that, speaking is their biggest challenge, but actually it may be listening comprehension. They may need more time management training. They may think that sitting in front of a computer doing kind of practice question after practice question is the best use of their time, but maybe actually the teacher is best placed to better guide them to success. So this is where your guidance becomes really crucial, and these strategic decisions about what to include in a preparation course is really key. So while I think it's important to listen to your learners' concerns, of course, the most effective preparation courses come from a guided process, one where you lead the way with your expertise while still involving learners in key decisions. Okay, so what is a good PTE preparation planning course? Well, I think there is a magic formula. I think that these three elements are the answers. Now, the first bucket, let's say, is that question strategy. So for the teacher to really understand the question types, the strategies, and then having the resources to give students enough practice. The second bucket is language systems. So kind of the building blocks that make up the language. So the grammar, we mentioned earlier, defining and non-defining relative clauses, compound sentences, nominalization, academic vocabulary, if we're talking about PT academic, pronunciation, so things like individual phonemes, stress, connected speech, functional language, so functional exponents for, say, agreeing, disagreeing, asking for permission, making a request. And then, of course, discourse as well is really key. So how language is structured in a conversation or in a specific genre of writing. And then the third bucket is language skills. So we know there are 4: receptive and productive, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and students should have enough practice developing these skills. So I think reflect now, take just a little bit moment, think back to the last few PTE preparation courses you've delivered, if you have, and think about, in terms of a percentage, how much time do you devote to each of these three buckets? Is it an 80-10-10 split? Is it a 30-30-40 split? Think about that. And if you're new, this is a really good goal to aim for. Why it's really important to aim for these 3 buckets is, as I mentioned before, learners sometimes come with very strong demands, some of which you can see on the screen in front of you. So we have 3 learners here. The first one is saying, and I quote, "I'm taking the test in 2 weeks. Can you help me go from 40 to 79? Another learner here is saying, I need a 79 plus, but actually my level is very low. And learner 3 thinks, well, I don't need any grammar practice. Just give me the templates and help me in that way. Now, these are unrealistic. It's maybe you have had experience of having these difficult conversations, but it is going to be impossible in that short space of time. Language needs that time, that dedication, that patience. And I think these students sometimes want everything that's on this slide, right? They want a placement test, they want a diagnostic test, they want lots of question type practice, they want question type strategies and lots of mock tests. And I am saying definitely, yeah, these are all really, really important, right? We want the placement test to be able to map them to the right class. We want a diagnostic test to kind of assess their strengths and areas for improvement. We want to teach students strategies, okay? So for example, highlighting keywords in the question prompt to ensure that they fully understand the question. They want lots of practice, and that's right, okay, for them to be given that. And when they are ready, they can be given an entire mock test to see how they do. And hopefully there has been that improvement since the diagnostic test at the beginning of the course. But what I would like to envisage is a world where we also build in these other 3 elements, which is key topics and themes in an academic context. So perhaps typical conversations you might have with a professor or a tutor. In PTE core, that might be a typical conversation that you have with a waiter or waitress in a coffee shop or in a restaurant. Language systems, we talked about the 5 earlier, and language skills, the 4 skills as well. And this is a holistic preparation course that will really set the students up, not just for success in the test, but also in the real world, because of course, by virtue of them taking the test, they are, we can assume, planning to study overseas or perhaps even migrate as well. So by integrating both language improvement and skill development, in addition to question strategy and practice, we really, I think, set students up for long-term success, giving them the skills that they truly need beyond the exam. So now it is with great pleasure I'm going to hand over to Anita, who will share a Pearson product that really encapsulates all these three buckets or components. So over to you, Anita, for your demo.
Thank you. So I'll start sharing the screen myself now. Oh. All right, so thank you, Magda. Thank you for inviting me to co-present today's webinar with you. And the following considerations, and following the considerations that we have just discussed, I'd like to encourage you all, our audience today, to take advantage of the fact that very soon we are launching a brand new edition of PTE Academic Expert, a 2-level course designed specifically to prepare learners for PTE Academic. And if you decide to use PTE Expert, you will not have to worry about balancing out all the key aspects of language development and test preparation, because we have thought about them for you in advance. So I'd like to start by saying that each test prep course has to be comprehensive, and that basically means it should meet the 3 key objectives. Things that Magda has already mentioned in the first part of the presentation. So first of all, language development, that is the skills, sub-skills, and language systems. And we really should promote the view that the primary goal of learners is to increase their language proficiency. And even though some of them might ultimately be aiming at just passing the exam, we should never really compromise the language development. Well, it is the ultimate goal of any language course, really. But obviously, for a test prep course, we cannot underestimate the importance of task training. These are important in any test prep course, because having the required language proficiency may not be enough to do well in a test. Yes, it's fair to equip learners with proper understanding of how to approach each task, what to focus on, what makes a good answer, and generally what strategies to use to address each task type. And finally, the overall test familiarization, so understanding the structure of the test, format, sections, timings, the mechanics of the items. It has little to do with language proficiency, but being unfamiliar with the test format can seriously affect the performance. So learners will generally do much worse if they are surprised by something or if they don't know what to expect. So PTE Expert is a comprehensive test prep course. So if you decide to use it rather than create a course from scratch on your own, it will be much easier for you and your learners to achieve these 3 objectives. And apart from being comprehensive, the good test prep course should also be flexible, which means that you will be able to adapt it easily, and it will let you take into account the following variables that Magda has also talked about. So the needs of the learners, their current level, their target level, their particular weaknesses, and addressing all these different needs can be even more challenging when the teacher makes stability class. Now, the difficult parts of the test. So, yes, certain question types are more challenging than others and require more practice than others. So, a good course will reflect that and will provide sufficient amount of scaffolded practice for such tasks. And timeframes available, that's another consideration. So some learners may have months to prepare, while others may need an intensive short-term course. So you might be teaching a crash 30-hour-long course, or you could be delivering a proper, regular 90-hour-long course. So the question is, can you use the same materials in both cases? Well, if you choose PTE Expert, then yes, you can. And finally, the digital versus traditional setting, well, or perhaps the hybrid one. So if learners prepare for a digital test, and PTE is obviously a digital test, so it makes sense to study for it in a digital setting, at least for the task training or for overall test familiarization. On the other hand, language development, so the skills, sub-skills, and systems can be easily and effectively covered in a more traditional form. So, since there is basically no one-fit-all ready-made solution, which makes the role of the teacher in any language learning process critical. But PTE Expert is a flexible product, and it will help you deliver the course which takes all these variables into consideration. So let's see how. Now, the series consists of 2 levels, B1 and B2, with the respective GSE ranges that you can see on the slide now. And we also offer a placement test to help you determine which level would be more appropriate for your students. And each level has the following components. So first of all, the major component is obviously the course book, and it will be available as a print book with a code to the digital version, or simply as the digital product, as preferred. Learners can use a standard, regular version of the course, or they may choose to use a self-study version, which gives them unrestricted access to the answer key and sample answers. Now, the second really important component of the series is the online practice. And that's the component that gives teachers and learners additional flexibility to extend the course as needed, to pick and choose practice material for the areas that learners may need more work on. So these can be used in class or set as homework as needed. So what's in the online practice? I need to be brief, so I just mentioned the major elements. So first of all, additional material to complement the course book lessons. So basically there are extra skills and language development activities, and also extra test tasks for further task training. They are closely related to what's covered in the given course book lesson or module. There is also the online extension section, and that's so these are additional sections for each module which do not have the equivalent pages in the course book, and these include grammar practice, should learners need further work here, review section for each module, and interactive personalized word lists. So what are these? So there are word lists with the definitions and example sentences, but you can also listen to the model pronunciation of the word. You can record your own pronunciation, compare the two, and you can also bookmark the words or collocations that you find particularly important or difficult, so you can access them quickly and easily later on. And finally, there are also mock tests once students are ready for the rehearsal before the real exam. And last but not least, there's also the online resources section for both learners and teachers. So learners get access to all the audio and video, and if they are using the self-study version, also to the answer keys. Teachers additionally get access to teacher notes, photocopyable activities, and assessment pack. So what will they find in the assessment pack? So for every module in the course book, they will get vocabulary quizzes, grammar quizzes, module test, speaking exam set, writing exam set, and additionally, every 2 units, there will be progress or cumulative tests. So quite a lot of resources here. And let's look now more closely at what's in the course book. So each level of the course book consists of 10 modules. So we are now looking at a sample scope, at the scope and sequence for module 1 in level B1. So the module is divided into section A and section B, which both offer a sequence of 5 lessons to teach all the relevant skills and provide extensive task training. But they have slightly different angles and explore different aspects of language and skills development. So each lesson focuses on a particular exam task, skill, or combination of them. And what is covered in section A is essentially reinforced or explored further in section B. So now, in a moment, we will look at the 2 sample lessons from the book, and I'd like to show how PTE Expert meets the 3 objectives of a good test prep course that I mentioned at the beginning. The objectives being language development, task training, and test familiarization, and also how we can use this flexibly. So now this is a writing lesson in module 1, part A, sorry, which will focus on summarize written text. And I appreciate you cannot probably see the details here, but I will walk you through in a moment and highlight the key elements. So in the first of the 2 writing lessons in the module, in the lesson in part A, learners don't attempt the full test task yet. They just focus on the skills and scaffolded task training. So this section of the lesson is called Test Strategy, and it really focuses on the skills critical to the task. In this case, it is identifying key information and making notes effectively. Now, apart from the test strategy, in this particular lesson, you will find a warm-up and reflect exercises. And I'd like to say a few words about the reflect, which I think is really a critical part of the lesson. It puts the learner in the center. It encourages them to think about their performance, assess themselves, and basically it increases their autonomy. Learners are supposed to think why they were successful or not, what they could have done better or differently. And students are also encouraged to share their reflections with their peers, classmates. So it is an immensely important part of the learning process. And it seems to me it tends to be a bit overlooked or underestimated sometimes, perceived perhaps as a waste of time. But in the long run, and it does make a difference when learners are mindful of their own learning process and learn from their own mistakes. So now, in the second lesson, in part B, learners revise what they have practiced in lesson A and build up further on these skills. So again, they recognize the key points and make notes, but now they work on a different text. And additionally, in every lesson, writing lesson in section B, there's a section called Language and Content. And this is yet another of the language development, language building blocks that learners are equipped with before they actually are finally asked to attempt the test task, which is practically at the end of the lesson. So now this is obviously not the only module where this particular task or relevant skills are practiced. They will come up again. However, if you feel that the learners need more practice now at this point, we are reminding teachers and learners that they can always go to the online practice and do the activities there. The reminder is included at the bottom of the B lesson. So this is how the first two objectives, so language development and task training, are addressed in the writing lessons. Now, in the lessons with the test practice, we are also including a reminder that there is a test reference section in the book, and that's the other reference at the bottom of the page. So in the test reference, you can find the following things. So description of each task, a sample task with call-out boxes to highlight the key elements and mechanics of the task, a reminder that there is a short video about the task available online, expert strategies and notes from developers to support test takers with easily implementable strategies and tips on how to approach the tasks and what to pay attention to. And for writing tasks, learners will also find checklist to support them when they produce their own writing, and so that they can check if they have taken everything into consideration. And there is also the model writing text in the expert writing bank. So this section addresses objective 3, that is test familiarization. And finally, I'd like to say a couple of words on how we can work with the course flexibly. So in terms of flexibility, depending on your learners' needs and where they struggle or what they find difficult, if writing is a big issue for them, and obviously depending on the length of the course that you are teaching, you can decide how many of the writing lessons you actually want to cover. So for example, if you are teaching a short course, but your learners really need to practice writing, you probably have to choose whether you do lessons A or B. There is simply no time to do both. So you'll probably choose to skip all A lessons and cover all B lessons. And also, potentially, set learners some activities from the online practice as homework. If you teach a long course, and still the students' needs are really high in that respect, you can take advantage of all the materials available. However, if your learners don't really need a lot of writing practice, so in that respect, their needs are low, you feel free to select just a couple of lessons, depending on the amount of time you have at your disposal, and use the time you save to focus on other areas that are more relevant to your students. So in case of a short course, you might wish to only set some of the online practice content as homework. But if you have more time available, you could still decide to devote some time to these lessons in class. So what you're looking at now is just an option. It's a proposal of how flexibly you can use the course. Magda, in a moment, will talk a little bit more about flexibility and various strategies around it. And well, unfortunately, we do not really have time in this session to delve into all the aspects of PTE Expert and how it addresses all the issues discussed at the beginning of this session. But hopefully I've been able to give you the flavor of how comprehensive and flexible the course is. So if you have any questions about PTE Expert, please drop them in the Q&A chat, and I will try to answer them later on. So now over to Magda.
Great. Thanks, Anita. Okay, yeah, so just a huge congratulations to you and your team. This has been a project long in the pipeline, so we're really excited to give you teachers a sneak preview. Just a couple of quick dates for your diaries. The print publication is going to be available in warehouses, certainly in Europe, in May. Now, these dates are flexible and may change. Timelines vary by region and country, so this is definitely a tentative date, with the digital publication coming afterwards, and the estimated go live date is June for that. So we had a really good question in the Q&A chat just around, well, actually it was to do with wanting to read the small print a little bit more clearly. And I think the best way to do that is obviously to get your hand on a copy. So what I'd like to suggest is that you scan this QR code, and if you're interested in learning more about the book or seeing it in closer detail, then what I'll do is I'll pass your contact details on to a member of our regional PTE sales team, and they'll be able to get in touch with you to talk through the product in more detail. So I'm just going to give you 30 seconds or so for those who are interested to fill in your contact details. Great. Okay. Let's move on then to options for coursebook use. We discussed before about the audience present today being in different geographies and working for very different institutions as well. And so I really wanted to emphasize what Anita was saying around flexibility. And actually, this kind of method of selecting, adapting, and supplementing works for PTE Expert second edition, but actually can be applied to any book or resource that you use. Okay, so I think bearing in mind we all have learners with very unique needs, I think developing a pick and choose approach is what Anita and I are advocating today. So let me break that down for you. So number one, select. Start by selecting parts of the book or that align with your learners' current needs. So that could be also, I guess, their time availability. For example, if your learners need extra practice with speaking, you can focus on those specific speaking sessions. The book is designed to be modular, as Anita mentioned, so that's really easy to lift from the contents. There might be a student who is good at writing, for example. As you know, we have 3 extended writing question types in PT Academic, write essay, summarize written text, and summarize spoken text. But actually, there are lots and lots of practice opportunities of those 3 question types in the book. So you may not need to do all of them. In terms of adapt, well, you can adapt the material to better suit your teaching context. So just a couple of examples. So again, with the 2 open-ended speaking question types, so that's describe, image, and retell lecture, there are actually 2 tasks in the book, practice tasks for each one. Primarily because we see that students sometimes have particular difficulty there. So, you don't need to do both, okay? Equally, let's say your student needs more practice in writing, you can select a reading text, because there are tons in the book, and ask them to summarize it, much like in the dedicated summarize written text activity. So just kind of adding that extra summarize written practice in there. In terms of the third section, supplement, well, you may want to go beyond the course book. Anita talked about a wealth of resources that come with the book, but, don't forget that we do have our official guide to PTE for test takers and for teachers, but also all of our wonderful Smart Prep resources on My PTE. So, we're not saying to kind of ditch them. We're saying very much that you can supplement the course book with the existing materials that you're using. So by selecting, adapting, and supplementing this book, you're making it work for your learners and ensuring that the course is tailored to their needs, which is great. So it's really just about being flexible, being creative, and providing a dynamic learning experience for our students. So let's see what that looks like in practice. So on the far left, we've got the various question types. We mentioned language skills, the importance of that, language systems, and then the exam strategy and practice. Well, in the orange box, this is a group class studying with B1 PT Expert, and then in the blue, we've got a one-to-one class with PT Expert B2. And you'll see there that in the group class, all 20 questions are being looked at because, of course, it's difficult to identify strengths and weaknesses across a big group. But for the one-to-one, more targeted practice of the question types that are particularly tricky for that particular learner. Again, you may want to focus on all skills in the group class for the same reason and just focus on perhaps the productive skills if that's where the area for improvement is. Then in terms of language systems, we've got that really nuanced difference between explicit language instruction. So for grammar, having a standalone lesson on defining and non-defining relative clauses, compound sentence, for example, nominalization, 3 examples of how to write long sentences in English, whereas perhaps for a one-to-one course, more implicit instruction in grammar is what's required. So rather than having a standalone lesson, we mark a student response. So let's say a summarized written text response. We notice that there is perhaps an opportunity that they could have used a defining or a non-defining relative clauses, and we raise their awareness to do that, to that, and do some remedial work there. So that's explicit, implicit difference. And then for exam practice, yes, you can utilize all the resources that you have available from the book, but then also leverage the PTE existing test taker preparation resources, which we have a lot of. Okay, so 2 final slides. Planning for a one-to-one course. Now, PT preparation courses are very similar to general English language course one-to-one courses. I think this speaks true of both contexts, but the real focus is of course on the personalization, so tailoring lessons to the learner's strengths and weaknesses, as we mentioned, based on the different question types. Then we talked a little bit about emerging language. So if learners provide a spoken response that has some pronunciation issues, perhaps you do some remedial work there and then to support them. Again, really maximizing opportunities in the lesson to help learners with language. 3, detailed feedback. Students want it, they expect it, but a test preparation course is wonderful for that. Really asking students to submit their open-ended responses, you assessing, evaluating their work for strengths and areas for improvement, so that students understand where they need to progress and also how. And then finally, pace control. You know, in these big classes, we need to kind of follow the activities and the pace to ensure that we meet our lesson objectives. But with one-to-ones, you can kind of speed up and go a bit more slowly, which obviously is very rewarding. And then planning for a mixed ability course, many of you will have experienced that you've got a variety of different levels within the classroom. So again, I think the big question is, do you choose the B1 book? Do you choose the B2 book? Well, we need to go kind of for the general needs of the mid-level learners in the class. And again, you know, personally, I like to build confidence in my students. So not to give them something too difficult, but perhaps, you know, if you can't do it just at the right level, maybe something that they are able to perform in, and maybe then increasing the challenge in certain parts. Differentiated tasks. So if we look at repeat sentence as an example, the coursebook provides the sentence that learners need to repeat, but let's say you've got some low-level learners in the class, why not shorten that sentence and ask one table to repeat a sentence that is shorter in length, has fewer words. In terms of number 3, peer learning and collaboration, well, this is a real must, I think, in preparation classes. It's a real opportunity in pair and group work to mix strong and weak, to effectively give you all these extra assistants that are going to be able to support the slightly weaker students. So leveraging that, if they are sitting behind a computer, let's say in a computer lab, then pushing those chairs back, getting students talking to one another, I think is really important to help them build that confidence in speaking. And then finally, making sure that we have a variety of different approaches to cater to different learning preferences. At Pearson, we have videos, we have reading texts, we have quizzes, so a variety of different materials to help engage your students. Okay, so that's it. The 50 minutes is up. The key takeaways from this session, number one, is to remember those 3 buckets around effective preparation courses, so language improvement, skill development, question strategies, and practice. Yeah, get excited about PTE Expert Second Edition. We really are. Talk to your colleagues about it. Tell your institution, academic directors, it is coming. And thirdly, if it's not quite the right fit, that's okay. Select, adapt, or supplement what you need to make sure that you are teaching your learners and catering to their needs. Okay, so as I said, here's just a final QR code, the same one as before, if you are interested in one of our members of our sales team to get in touch. But for now, I think I'll hand over to Bartek for the Q&A. And finally, just to let you know that the next webinar is on the 24th of April. So in a month's time, we're going to dive deeper into what an effective PTE lesson looks like and the different elements that include. So really hope to see you again in April. Over to Bartek.
Okay, thanks a lot, Magda, and thank you, Anita, for sharing your knowledge and your insights. Couple of things. In the first place, it's been answered, but I really appreciate one of the idea that one of the attendees had about designing a webinar that would resemble a mock test. So creativity, I would say, top level, and we've never thought of it, but we welcome all those ideas. And so once you'll get a survey, all of you will receive a Zoom link tomorrow with a link to the survey. And when you'll be completing this survey, just type in this idea, because we gather the thoughts and the suggestions that come from your side, and we try to make them fit into the teaching programs we organize. Maybe, who knows, that 2026 will kick off with the mock test webinar. Well, let's see what happens. 2025 program is already set. Some of you asked which platform we can purchase these books. So it means that there is this initial interest. And I guess it's good, because when I was listening to you, Anita, I said, like, there are several things really worth exploring and getting a deeper dive into the PTE Expert. So can you, in the first place, just fill out the form that Magda shared, and then we'll make sure that we'll contact you when the book will be available. And just in case you forget, make sure this, once the book will go live, I'm sure you will find this information on how to purchase it on PTE academic website, because this will be the course book they will be offering. So this is the second option. The third one, I guess it was more of a comment, not a question, that we are presenting this reading sections. So please remember that it was not to read the whole reading activity, but just to see the functionality of the units of the section A and section B, and the chances to look at the reflect button, which is sometimes, as Anita, you mentioned, like forgotten, as it's not so important, but it is quite important when doing a lesson. So these were actually some of the comments and questions. If there is anything else, just drop them in the Q&A. And of course, you can ask anything in the survey. And please remember that every 3 months, we have Ask Me Anything session. And we spent all the session on asking and answering questions about PTE. So if you go to iTeach PTE webinar I Teach PT webinar website, you will find the webinars and you will see the date of the next Ask Me Anything session. Magda, Anita, any final comments to our audience? Anything?
No, not from me. I just thank you very much for attending. We're really excited to share the product with you today.
Okay, thank you for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your day or morning or evening, depending on the time zone. And see you soon, probably next month on the next webinar in I Teach PT webinar series. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.